It is not circumstances that determine life, but how we react to what happens. Epictetus. What happens when your day begins? Not with direction, but with hesitation. If your earliest thoughts are filled with pressure, doubt, and silent resistance, then your life will keep moving in circles, even when you want progress. The morning reveals the mind. Before the world reaches you, your inner state is already setting the tone. Stoicism begins here, not with controlling events, but with governing response. The first moments of the day matter because the mind is still impressionable, still unguarded, still close to its deepest habits. What you repeat in that state does not stay as language. It becomes perception. It becomes emotional posture. It becomes behavior. What you repeat, you become. That is why morning words are never trivial. They either strengthen your discipline or reinforce your confusion. Marcus Aurelius understood this with unusual clarity. In Meditations, Book 2.1, he wrote, "Begin the morning by saying to thyself, I shall meet with the busybody, the ungrateful, arrogant, deceitful, envious, unsocial." He was preparing his mind so that other people would not control it. Before politics, conflict, duty, and fatigue arrived, he chose his stance. That choice protected his judgment. It gave him steadiness in a world full of noise. Preparation is power. A calm day rarely begins by accident. Most people try to fix a scattered life by changing schedules, jobs, partners, or goals. Stoicism asks something harder and more honest. Change the governing voice within, and the visible structure of life slowly begins to follow that hidden order with consistency. That is the deeper point of this script. Your life does not change only when your circumstances change. It begins to change when your inner command changes. The sentences you say every morning are not empty sounds. They are instructions. They shape attention, direct will, and train identity. Your first thought is a direction. So the real question is not whether mornings affect your future. They do. The question is whether you will leave that power to habit or finally use it on purpose. Affirmation 1. I am the master of my fate. Most people do not live as if they are directing a life. They live as if life is happening to them. They wake up already defeated by memory, pressure, comparison, family history, money problems, or old disappointment. Then they call that realism. Stoicism calls it surrender. The first affirmation breaks that pattern at its root. When you say, I am the master of my fate, you are not claiming control over weather, luck, or other people. You are claiming authority over your response, your effort, your standards, and your next decision. I refuse the posture of a victim. This matters because the mind is always searching for a cause. If you keep telling yourself that your life is limited by the economy, your upbringing, or what others failed to give you, your energy will keep flowing outward. You will study the prison more than the key. Epictetus made this distinction with brutal clarity when he taught that some things are in our control and others are not. My power begins where my excuses end. Your present life is not created by one dramatic choice alone. It is shaped by repeated inner positions. A person who constantly says, "Nothing ever works for me," starts moving with hesitation, bitterness, and low expectation. A person who says, "I will act with what I have," begins to notice openings that were invisible before. The outer difference may look small at first, but the inner pattern changes everything. Thought becomes posture, posture becomes action, action becomes character, character becomes destiny. This is why responsibility is not a burden in Stoicism, it is freedom. The moment you stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What can I do with this?" your mind steps out of passivity. That does not erase hardship. It restores agency inside hardship. Marcus Aurelius repeatedly returned to the idea that the soul can remain unharmed unless it makes itself so. My life moves in the direction of my governing thoughts. This is not motivational theater. It is a working principle. Say this affirmation in the morning because mornings expose your default attitude. If you begin the day by unconsciously reliving blame, you will spend the day reacting. If you begin by declaring authorship, you will act differently before noon. You will speak with more intention. You will choose with more clarity. You will stop waiting for perfect conditions to grant permission. The deeper lesson is simple and demanding. Fate is not only what meets you, fate is also what you repeatedly become in response to what meets you. Own that, and your life starts changing from the inside. Each morning, this sentence trains your mind to look inward for command rather than outward for rescue. Once that shift becomes habitual, you no live like a passenger. You begin living like a force. Affirmation 2. My definite chief aim guides all my actions. A scattered mind can work hard and still go nowhere. That is one of the most frustrating truths about life. Many people are exhausted not because they lack discipline, but because their effort is divided across too many impulses, fears, and half-formed desires. They want success, but only in a vague emotional way. They want change, but they do not define what change means. Stoicism respects intention, but it does not confuse intention with direction. This second affirmation forces clarity. When you say, "My definite chief aim guides all my actions," you are telling the mind that your energy will now serve one ruling purpose. A life without aim leaks strength. Without a central aim, the day gets hijacked by whatever feels urgent. Messages, moods, random opportunities, other people's demands, and your own shifting emotions begin to govern your behavior. You become busy, but not aligned. Seneca warned that to the person who does not know what port they are sailing toward, no wind is favorable. What is not aimed cannot be built. A clear aim does more than motivate. It organizes perception. Once the mind knows what matters most, it starts filtering reality differently. You begin to notice useful patterns, relevant relationships, and unnecessary distractions. This is why repeating a goal every morning matters. It is not magical thinking, it is mental orientation. If your central aim is to build a disciplined body, become financially stable, master a craft, or create a meaningful body of work, that aim begins shaping your decisions before temptation fully speaks. It changes what you say yes to. It changes what you refuse. It changes how you use the next hour, not just how you imagine the next decade. Most failure is not dramatic collapse. It is diffusion. It is the slow loss of force caused by living without a governing center. People chase 5 identities at once, then wonder why they feel internally split. They move according to mood instead of mission. They start, stop, restart, and then call themselves unlucky. But a chief aim creates internal hierarchy. It teaches the mind what comes first. My priorities must become visible in action. Once that happens, effort stops scattering. This affirmation also protects you from emotional weather. A person with no defined aim is easily thrown off by criticism, boredom, delay, or praise. A person with a ruling purpose can absorb all 4 and keep moving. Marcus Aurelius often brought himself back to the work of his nature rather than the noise of opinion. The aim decides the day. Say this each morning until your mind stops wandering like a boat without a rudder. The real power of a clear goal is not that it makes life easy. It makes life coherent. And coherence is what turns energy into results. Clarity saves years that confusion quietly steals away. Affirmation 3. I already contain all the strength I need. Many people move through life with a quiet assumption that they are missing something essential. They think confidence will come after approval, courage will come after support, and success will come after circumstances improve. Until then, they wait, they delay, they hesitate. This affirmation attacks that habit directly. When you say, "I already contain all the strength I need," you are refusing the psychology of lack. You are reminding yourself that the first source of power is not outside conditions, but inner command. I am not empty at the center. You may still need training, guidance, and time, but you do not need to begin from self-contempt or spiritual dependence. Stoicism has always pushed against dependence on externals. Epictetus taught that the person who seeks freedom must stop tying peace to what lies outside the will. No man is free who is not master of himself. Most forms of self-doubt are old conclusions that were repeated too long. Someone failed early, was ignored, compared themselves to stronger people, or absorbed the fears of family, and then built an identity around insufficiency. After that, every challenge seemed to confirm the same lie. But the mind is suggestible. It will obey whatever view of the self is repeated with conviction. Doubt closes the gate before effort even begins. The tragedy is that many people call this humility, when it is really self-abandonment. The deeper point of this affirmation is not that you know everything already. It is that you already possess the capacities through which growth happens. Attention, endurance, choice, adaptation, courage under pressure, the ability to learn, the ability to recover, the ability to begin again. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Look within. Within is the fountain of good, and it will ever bubble up if thou wilt ever dig." Say this affirmation in the morning, because morning doubt is subtle. It rarely says you are doomed. It says you are not ready yet, not prepared enough, not gifted enough, not supported enough. Those thoughts drain force before the day has even started. My limits are often inherited beliefs, not final truths. Once you see that, a new relation to effort begins. You stop waiting to feel powerful and start acting from the power already present in your reason and will. The real strength you need is not the absence of fear, it is the refusal to obey fear. Repeat that long enough, and the mind stops begging the world for permission each new day. Affirmation 4. Today, I will go beyond what is required in everything I do. Most people stay average for a reason. They train themselves to stop at the line of obligation. They do what was assigned, what was expected, what was paid for, and then wonder why life gives them ordinary results. This affirmation breaks that ceiling. When you say, "Today I will go beyond what is required in everything I do," you are choosing a standard that does not depend on supervision. You are deciding that your work will reflect character, not merely compliance. I will not build my life on the minimum. This is not about exhaustion, performance theater, or becoming useful to everyone at your own expense. It is about the discipline of surplus value. The person who checks carefully, prepares more thoroughly, listens more attentively, and finishes with more care begins to separate themselves from the crowd over time. Excellence begins where obligation ends. Stoicism supports this because it places virtue in the quality of action, not in applause afterward. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." The point is not doing more for vanity, it is doing things rightly. A person who only gives the minimum creates a dangerous habit. They begin measuring life by what they can get away with. That mentality spreads. It affects speech, relationships, discipline, and promises. Soon, half effort feels normal. But character is built in the hidden margin between what is demanded and what is voluntarily offered. A cleaner room, a sharper draft, a calmer response, a second review before sending, an extra hour of preparation. These small acts do not look dramatic, yet they build trust, skill, and reputation. Seneca observed that goodness does not ask how little it can do, but moves toward what is honorable with willingness. My name will be shaped by the care I bring. That is why this affirmation matters in the morning. It establishes the standard before laziness negotiates with you. It reminds you that your task today is not merely to finish, but to finish well. Going beyond what is required also changes how opportunities find you. People notice the one who delivers more clarity, more steadiness, more reliability, and more respect than the role demanded. Not instantly, not always publicly, but consistently. More care today becomes more trust tomorrow. This is how invisible effort turns into doors. The world tends to remember those who relieve burden, solve problems, and protect quality without being chased. So say this each morning as a vow. I will not live as someone who does just enough. I will become someone whose standard rises from within. That habit, repeated, becomes one of the clearest forms of power. Affirmation 5. I attract wealth by serving others. Most people think about money in a way that makes them smaller. They chase it directly, speak about it anxiously, compare themselves constantly, and measure success by what they can extract. That mindset creates tension, not value. This affirmation replaces hunger with usefulness. When you say, I attract wealth by serving others, you are training the mind to stop asking, how can I get more, and start asking, how can I become more useful? Wealth follows value, not desperation. That shift matters because lasting prosperity is rarely built by obsession alone. It is built by solving real problems, easing real burdens, and giving people something that improves life in a meaningful way. This idea is deeply consistent with Stoicism because Stoic ethics begins with the fact that human beings are social creatures. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "What brings no benefit to the hive brings none to the bee." A person who learns to benefit others becomes difficult to ignore. A person who makes life better for others becomes valuable in any economy. Stoicism never admired possession without purpose. It admired right action, fairness, and contribution to the common good. That is why service is not a sentimental idea here. It is a path to becoming needed. Money is often treated as if it were a reward for desire. It is usually a response to contribution. The teacher who explains clearly, the builder who works carefully, the entrepreneur who removes friction, the artist who speaks to something people deeply feel, all create forms of service. Useful people are rarely without opportunity. The point is not self-sacrifice without limits. It is disciplined contribution. Serve well, and you increase trust. Increase trust, and you increase demand. Increase demand, and compensation often follows. This affirmation also protects the mind from envy. When you focus only on what others have, you become reactive and shallow. You start wanting the appearance of wealth without the discipline that created it. But when you ask, what problem can I solve better? What pain can I reduce? What skill can I sharpen for someone else's benefit? Your energy becomes constructive. My task is not to chase reward, but to become worth rewarding. This is the cleaner form of ambition. It ties prosperity to usefulness rather than appetite. Say this in the morning because it changes the emotional tone of ambition. It removes greed without removing drive. It makes you proactive, attentive, and grounded in reality. The richest mindset is not one that grabs, it is one that generates. Service turns effort into influence. If you repeat that long enough, wealth stops being a fantasy attached to status and becomes a byproduct of character, skill, and usefulness. The deeper law is simple. People are drawn toward those who reliably create value. The more sincerely and skillfully you serve, the more naturally life begins sending opportunity back in your direction. That is how service becomes prosperity without corrupting character. Affirmation 6. I turn every failure into a stepping stone. Most people experience failure as a verdict. Something goes wrong, and they immediately translate the event into identity. I failed, therefore I am inadequate. I was rejected, therefore I am behind. I made a mistake, therefore I am not meant for this. Stoicism rejects that whole chain of interpretation. This affirmation teaches a different response. When you say, I turn every failure into a stepping stone, you are not denying pain, loss, or embarrassment. You are refusing to let difficulty become final meaning. Setbacks are information, not identity. That single shift can save years of bitterness. It teaches you to separate event from identity, pain from meaning, and temporary defeat from permanent self-definition for good. Failure becomes destructive, mainly when the mind stops examining it and starts worshipping it. Instead of asking, what is this showing me? People ask, why does this always happen to me? Instead of extracting instruction, they rehearse humiliation. But every obstacle carries material. A weakness revealed, a blind spot exposed, a method that did not work, a habit that needs correction. Every blow can become a lesson in disguise. The person who learns to mine failure for insight grows stronger than the person who only seeks comfort. Epictetus taught that events themselves are not what crush us, but our judgments about them. One person loses and concludes life is unfair. Another loses and becomes more precise, more patient, more skilled. The event may be similar. The interpretation creates the difference. Marcus Aurelius made the same point in another form when he wrote, not to be harmed and not to feel harmed. He did not mean nothing hurts. He meant the inner core does not have to surrender. This affirmation is powerful in the morning, because morning thoughts often revive old defeats before the day has even begun. The memory of failure returns, and with it comes hesitation. You lower your effort before life asks anything of you. This sentence interrupts that pattern. It reminds you that a fall is not proof of inferiority. It is part of the shaping process. Steel is tested. Judgment is refined. Character is built under friction, not comfort. The person who studies defeat carefully returns with sharper judgment, steadier nerves, and resilience comfort never teaches. The deeper Stoic lesson is not merely to endure failure, but to use it. Pain can be converted into power. That conversion requires honesty. You must see where you were weak, where you were arrogant, where you were impatient, or where you simply needed more repetition. But once you do, failure stops being an enemy and becomes raw material. The person who can do that becomes difficult to defeat because even loss starts feeding growth. Repeat this affirmation until your mind stops treating mistakes as tombstones and starts treating them as steps. Then, even your hardest days begin serving your future. Affirmation 7. I build success through patience and persistence. One of the most dangerous illusions in modern life is the belief that meaningful progress should feel fast. People want visible change after a few days, mastery after a few attempts, and rewards before their discipline has even matured. When those rewards do not arrive quickly, they assume something is wrong. They lose heart, abandon the path, and call themselves unlucky. This affirmation corrects that impatience at its source. When you say, I build success through patience and persistence, you are teaching your mind to respect the slow laws of growth. Real change is often quiet at first. The strongest lives are rarely transformed in one dramatic moment. They are formed through repetition, restraint, correction, and the willingness to continue when nothing looks impressive yet. Stoicism respects time because nature itself works by season, sequence, and accumulation. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Time is like a river made up of the events which happen and a violent stream." That image matters because it reminds us that life is always moving, whether we are frustrated or not. The question is whether your small efforts are being added to that current in the right direction. One workout will not transform the body. One page will not write the book. One calm response will not perfect character. But repeated over months and years, these quiet acts become a force. Impatience ruins progress because it keeps asking for emotional proof before the work has had time to compound. A person begins well, then stops because the outcome feels too far away. Another keeps going, not because they are constantly inspired, but because they understand that consistency has a delayed reward. What grows slowly often grows deeply. This is why patience is not passivity, it is disciplined endurance. It means you keep showing up without demanding immediate applause from reality. Seneca warned against restless instability in the pursuit of improvement. He wrote, "It is not because things are difficult that we do not dare. It is because we do not dare that they are difficult." The spirit of that line fits here. Progress becomes harder when the mind keeps quitting early. Persistence lightens difficulty because repetition builds familiarity, and familiarity reduces resistance. Say this affirmation in the morning, because mornings often awaken the old hunger for quick proof. You want to feel ahead, certain, already transformed. But growth rarely looks dramatic while it is happening. Small effort, repeated, becomes power. The Stoic approach is steadier. Do the next right act. Do it again tomorrow. Let time assist what discipline begins. Success is not only built by talent or intensity, it is built by staying long enough for your better habits to take root, strengthen, and finally become part of who you are. Affirmation 8. My mind closes itself to every negative influence. The mind is never left untouched. Every day, something is trying to enter it. The fears of other people, the bitterness of someone who gave up, the constant repetition of bad news, the voice that says, nothing will change, the cynicism that disguises itself as intelligence. If you do not guard the mind, it absorbs more than you notice. Then, one day you think the heaviness is your own, when in fact much of it was planted there by repetition. This affirmation trains a boundary. When you say, my mind closes itself to every negative influence, you are not becoming naive or detached from reality. You are choosing what deserves permission to shape your inner world. Not every voice deserves entry. That choice matters because whatever enters often stays longer than expected. Stoicism teaches that impressions arrive constantly, but assent is still ours. Epictetus warned that the first appearance of a thing is not the same as truth, and that we must test what enters the mind before surrendering to it. No man is free who is not master of himself. That freedom includes the power to reject mental contagion. Other people may be anxious, reactive, resentful, or addicted to hopeless talk, but their condition does not have to become your condition unless you keep welcoming it inward. This is why the image of the garden is useful. A mind does not stay empty. It grows whatever is planted and watered. If all you feed it is complaint, comparison, and fear, then those things will take root and begin shaping mood, expectation, and identity. What you allow repeatedly, you strengthen. Negative influence is dangerous not only because it feels unpleasant, but because it slowly begins to sound reasonable. After enough exposure, defeat starts to look wise, and courage starts to look childish. That is how inner erosion happens. Marcus Aurelius gave a simple example of mental discipline when he wrote, "A cucumber is bitter. Throw it away. There are briars in the road. Turn aside from them. This is enough." He meant that reality does not need your added dramatization. See clearly. Respond wisely. Refuse unnecessary mental poison. The Stoic mind does not open itself equally to every impression. It filters. Say this affirmation in the morning because mornings are when the mind is open. If you begin the day with fear, noise, and other people's despair, you will carry that residue into your choices. I choose what grows inside me. This is not denial. It is stewardship. Protecting your mind is not selfish. It is responsible. Once you understand that thought has an environment, you stop treating your attention carelessly. You become more selective, deliberate, and inwardly clean. That is how strength is preserved in a loud world. Affirmation 9. I am grateful for this day and its opportunities. Gratitude is often misunderstood as a soft feeling, a polite habit, or a brief emotional lift. In Stoic terms, it is something far more practical. It directs attention. It trains perception. It changes what the mind is prepared to notice. When you wake up complaining, comparing, or rehearsing what is missing, your mind becomes a magnet for further lack. What I notice, I strengthen. The day then appears narrow before it has even begun. But when you begin with gratitude, you do not become passive or naive. You become accurate. You start seeing what is already in your hands, what is still possible, and what deserves action. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul is dyed by the thoughts." Gratitude matters because it colors the mind before events do. A grateful mind does not deny difficulty. It refuses to let difficulty become the only lens. There may still be pressure, unfinished work, uncertainty, or disappointment. But there is also time, breath, choice, and the chance to use this day well. This day still contains openings. That sentence is not sentimental, it is strategic. A person who sees no openings rarely acts. A person who sees even one meaningful possibility begins to move. Stoicism also connects gratitude with acceptance. Epictetus taught that much suffering comes from demanding that reality obey our preference instead of learning to work with what is given. Gratitude helps make that posture possible. It says, "This is the day I have, not the day I imagined. This is the body, season, and circumstance I must work with now. Enough is visible for the next step." Once the mind accepts that, energy stops leaking into resentment. You stop arguing with the morning and start entering it. You stop measuring life only by what is absent and start recognizing resources that were ignored when your thoughts were ruled by lack alone. This affirmation is powerful in the morning because complaint is seductive. It can make a person feel perceptive while quietly draining initiative. Gratitude does the opposite. It restores proportion. It reminds you that even an imperfect day contains materials for strength, learning, usefulness, or beauty. Marcus Aurelius praised, "Contentment with thy portion and with few things." Gratitude is not a denial of ambition. It is the refusal to build ambition on contempt for the present. I begin with appreciation, then I act. That is the right order. When you practice that each morning, the day stops feeling like a burden you must survive and starts looking like a field of possibilities you are responsible to use. That shift is subtle, but it changes posture, energy, and the quality of every decision that follows. Affirmation 10. Today I act with decision and courage. Many lives are not ruined by one decision. They are weakened by hesitation. People wait for certainty, the right mood, timing, confidence, or a guarantee that effort will pay off. While they wait, opportunities cool down, momentum dies, and self-respect erodes. This affirmation cuts through that paralysis. When you say, "Today I act with decision and courage," you are not promising recklessness. You are choosing movement over stagnation. Indecision is a decision in disguise. It chooses delay, and delay has consequences. Stoicism never taught that fear must disappear before action begins. It taught that reason must lead, even when fear is present. Epictetus repeatedly distinguishes what is up to us from what is not, and action belongs to our sphere more than outcome does. That is why courage is not a mood. It is obedience to what reason knows should be done. I move before I feel ready. For many people, that is the missing discipline. They treat readiness as a feeling instead of a commitment. But life rarely rewards those who wait until discomfort is gone. Delay also creates illusions. The longer you postpone action, the larger it appears in the mind. A conversation becomes terrifying. A project becomes impossible. A decision becomes loaded with fantasy and dread. Then the person confuses mental inflation with reality. Marcus Aurelius warned against being carried along inconsiderately by the appearance of things. The Stoic response is simple. Examine the task. Name it honestly. Then begin. Action shrinks what anxiety enlarges. Once movement starts, the mind becomes clearer than it was during analysis. This morning affirmation matters because hesitation begins early. You wake up bargaining with the day. Later, tomorrow, after one more check, after one more sign. But delay hardens into character if repeated often enough. Courage, by contrast, becomes more available each time it is exercised. Epictetus says we should ask, with every event, what capacity we have for making use of it. One of those capacities is brave action under uncertainty. Courage is rarely grand in the beginning. Often it is a clear email, a difficult phone call, a first draft, a boundary, or a risk accepted without drama. The deeper lesson is not that every decision is wise. It is that a life of perpetual postponement becomes smaller, weaker, and more dependent on conditions. Courage turns thought into fate. You will correct mistakes as you go. You will refine judgment through movement. But you cannot steer a life that never leaves the shore. So say this in the morning with seriousness. Today I decide. Today I move. Today I act, even if fear walks beside me. And when this becomes habit, confidence stops being something you wait for and becomes something your actions build. Affirmation 11. I am becoming the person I was meant to be. Most people measure success by what can be seen: money, status, recognition, external validation. These things are visible, comparable, and easy to explain. But Stoicism pushes the focus inward. It asks a different question. Who are you becoming while you pursue these things? This affirmation gathers everything that came before and directs it toward identity. When you say, I am becoming the person I was meant to be, you are no longer chasing isolated outcomes. You are committing to a process of transformation. My life is not only what I achieve, but who I become. That distinction changes everything. Growth in the Stoic sense is not accidental. It is deliberate. It is built through repeated choices that shape character over time. Discipline instead of impulse. Clarity instead of confusion. Courage instead of avoidance. Integrity instead of convenience. Each day, these small decisions accumulate and begin forming a different kind of person. Character is built in quiet repetition. You do not suddenly become strong. You practice strength. You do not suddenly become wise. You train your judgment. Over time, these practices stop feeling forced and start becoming natural. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself of this inner standard. He wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." That line removes all abstraction. It brings philosophy into action. It says, your potential is not proven by intention, but by embodiment. The person you are meant to be is not hidden in the future. It is expressed in what you choose to do today. This affirmation also protects you from a common trap. Many people improve one part of life while neglecting the rest. They gain money but lose integrity. They gain recognition but lose stability. They gain skill but lose direction. Stoicism refuses that fragmentation. It seeks alignment. The outer life should reflect the inner order. Progress must be whole, not partial. When your habits, values, and actions begin to match, your life gains coherence. That coherence creates a deeper form of confidence than any external success can provide. Say this affirmation in the morning because identity is shaped early in the day. Before pressure arrives, before distraction takes over, you decide what kind of person will face the day. Not perfect, not finished, but committed to growth. I am in the process, not at the end. That mindset removes the need for instant results and replaces it with steady development. The deeper truth is simple. You are always becoming something. The only question is whether that process is conscious or automatic. If you leave it to habit, you become a reflection of circumstance. If you take ownership, you become a result of intention. This affirmation is a commitment to that second path. It ties every action, every thought, and every effort to a larger direction. Not just success in the world, but success in becoming someone you can respect. And once that becomes the standard, everything else begins to align around it. At this point, nothing here is complicated. The ideas are clear. The structure is simple. The real question is not whether these principles work. The question is whether you will use them. Most people hear something useful, agree with it, feel briefly motivated, and then return to the same mental patterns the next morning. That is where the difference is created. Not in knowledge, but in repetition. Knowing is not doing, and without doing, nothing changes. You already have the tool. It does not require money, permission, or perfect conditions. It requires attention and consistency. The first minutes of your morning are not empty space. They are a point of influence. They decide the tone of your thinking before the world interrupts. They shape your reactions before pressure tests you. They either reinforce old patterns or begin building new ones. The first thought sets the direction. Most people leave that moment unattended. They wake up and immediately fall into habit. Checking, worrying, drifting, reacting. Then they wonder why their days feel out of control. Stoicism offers a different approach. It says, take control where control is still possible. Not later, not after the day has already scattered your focus. At the beginning, when your mind is still quiet enough to be directed. When your attention has not yet been claimed by external demands. That is where these affirmations belong. Not as empty words, but as instructions. Repetition builds identity. Say them with intention. Say them with awareness. Let them shape how you see, how you decide, and how you act. The gap between an average life and a disciplined one is often not dramatic. It is built from small, repeated choices that most people ignore. The way you start your morning is one of those choices. Ignore it, and your mind will follow its default patterns. Use it, and you begin to reshape those patterns from the inside. Over time, that difference compounds. Your thinking becomes clearer, your actions become more deliberate, your life becomes more aligned. You do not need to wait for a perfect moment to begin. There is no perfect version of you required to start this process. There is only the next morning. Change begins when repetition begins. That is the real invitation here. Not to feel inspired, but to act consistently. Not to chase a new idea every week, but to stay with a simple practice long enough for it to take effect. So the decision is yours. Continue waking up the same way and expect the same results. Or take control of the first moments of your day and allow them to shape everything that follows. The difference will not appear instantly, but it will appear, and when it does, it will not feel like luck. It will feel like the result of a mind that finally stopped drifting and started leading itself. Tomorrow morning is enough. Start there.